Yeah, I mean, if in a multiple partner business, it's it's almost more important to do this planning, because that conflict can come up twice, right? Disability, divorce, or death, right? That can come up with two different people, and then what happens in that event, right? So if somebody dies, um, what are you going to do? How are you going to value their interest in the business? How is that family's estate going to be paid over what period of time? Using what funds? I mean, these are all questions that um, they're not fun to talk about. They uh, don't help drive revenue, so they're not something that is on an owner's priority list. But they are things that will really impact the business if unplanned for, and also will impact the price of your business, what it is worth in a sale. Uh, a business that has these things worked out in advance is more valuable than one that doesn't. I think divorce is probably the one that people assume is not going to happen to them. And it ends up happening, I think, a little more frequently than people realize, especially in multiple partner businesses. So, sometimes people they think that they will never get divorced, and they don't really do the calculus on their business partner's relationship, um and it can get very messy when you have that event occur and somebody is legally entitled to a portion of the business and they're not really a party to the business, and so now you have to come up with how is everyone going to be satisfied and the business continuing to function, and so lack of planning around potential divorce uh, can create a lot of mess. If they're away from the business for some extended period, and I'm not talking like 4 to 6 weeks, but if you have 6 to 8 to 12 months where you are unable to materially participate in the business, um, how are you going to get income, right? Assuming that your participation in the business is how you're driving your income. If that were to stop, is your income going to decline? If your income's not going to decline, is your income in a year going to decline because you're the salesperson and now you're not filling the pipeline? So you need some policy in place personally. You also need a policy in place on the business side. So from the business's perspective, if you're if an owner is unable to materially participate, those tasks that are done by that person need to be done by someone. And so what what is going to happen in the event that that owner is not there anymore? And that's where you need a plan. It's not always solved by money. It's solved by a plan, right? And so what is going to happen for the business to replace the owner for some period of time? And are they even authorized to do certain tasks, or is it really just the owner who can, so having a plan to authorize people to act on your behalf in certain situations is something that's really important. Disagreement's a really big one. So again, multiple partner business, what happens if one partner is older and they don't have the same time horizon as the younger partner? And the younger partner wants to invest in growth, and the older partner doesn't see the financial benefit in doing so. Can he refuse to hire for the business? Having some agreement laid out for in the event of a dispute. One, how is the dispute handled? What are the powers that each party has? And then two, if the dispute cannot be resolved and you are going to divorce from each other financially, does that work? How is the business going to be valued, right? And how are you going to be paid out? Do you have insurance for what happens if you were to get hacked? What happens if someone at your firm were to pay a check in accounts receivable that was actually not a check? What happens if all kinds of things that could happen to your business where the harm is totally unrelated to what you do day in and day out. And it now causes a big disruption, right? There are mitigation practices that you can put in place. One, from things that are as simple as putting a training program together, um, having an insurance policy depending on the circumstance, right? Those are things that can help reduce the likelihood of the event, or if the event happens, reduce the pain that the business goes through. If I want to buy a CPA firm and you don't have any, insurance in place in the event that your data is breached, your profit margins aren't right, because I know that you should have an insurance policy to cover that risk, because that risk is material. It happens, you don't have one. So you're operating at a 45 or 40% profit margin, but really should be 38 after we talk through the premiums associated with that. Or you don't have this training program involved, and that's going to require hiring people to continually monitor that training, right? As we know, data security training is not something that happens once, right? We frequently get emails at work that are phishing tests. That requires people you're paying salary to monitor people at work. So it it really changes the value of your business if you have a plan in place or if you don't. I think that you should be running your business the same whether you're in any one of those stages, because some of these events, they don't care where you are in life, right? Your spouse who's unhappy with you and is going to divorce you does not care that you're in the growth stage or 3 years away from selling. You're going to get divorced, right? So having the likelihood of the events, the 5Ds occurring, are not really related to the growth stage of the business. Where it does matter a little bit is an owner is preparing for a sale and a third party is coming in to value the business. The values will be different depending on how prepared this continuity plan is. So for someone who is in the stage of the business where they're looking at selling, they're 3 to 5 years away. This becomes really important because these are things that are not that hard to clean up. They're not that expensive to clean up. It's just a little bit of time and working with the right professionals, and it does increase the value of the business. So, on a personal side for an owner, I would say always operate your business as if you're trying to sell, not because you're trying to sell, you're just trying to protect your business from one of these events, which could happen tomorrow. I think a business owner would be well served by speaking to their business plan advisor, right? So in my case, it's working with a wealth management advisor that happens to be trained in this area. And I'm going to sit down with somebody and ask them a couple of practical questions, right? What happens to the business if you get divorced? What happens to the business if your business partner gets divorced? I'm just going to walk through the list, and we're going to see within 15 minutes what the plan is. And I'm not concerned about the documents and reading them. I'm concerned about, is there a plan? Um, and then it will become clear that there either is or there isn't. And then if there is a plan, when was it done? When was the last time it was updated? Have there been changes to the business since it was updated? Um, but if there wasn't a plan in place, now we just need to get in front of the right professionals to see what are the gaps and how do we shore up the plan, right? And those professionals can be, a range of people, from insurance to a lawyer to, a value advisor. There's different professionals you would see depending on which part of the plan it is. But I think it's important for somebody to just start with a generalist who can diagnose. It's kind of like going into your physician's office. You would start with your primary care, and then that primary care would say, okay, there's definitely something wrong with your lungs. You need to go see a pulmonologist, right? That would be, you want a wealth advisor that has enough training in business to be able to diagnose and say, you need to go see this specialist. Just important for an owner, if they find themselves, you know, reading something like this, to take action. These events do not care where you are in your business life cycle.